the Commanders. Should Philly be worried if this is their week 1 playoff matchup?
You know, a friend of mine said take off an accessory before you leave the house. I don't really need these sunglasses because I saw very clearly how good Jaden Daniels and the Washington Redskins would be before the season started. So maybe you guys can share those amongst yourself.
I think that Jaden has elevated, at least for the moment, to
MVP?
a place of he's not MVP candidate.
He might.
But,
I think he can get some votes.
Oh, you mean show up on some ballot?
Not
Yeah, that he
one,
could
but
show
like
up on
fifth or fourth.
Absolutely, show up on some ballots. Anytime the opposing team's quarterback is playing better than your quarterback, there's some concern. And so, listen, I would
talking about Pickett. Or are you talking
I'm talking about
like,
Jalen.
if we
I'm saying
talking
about in the playoffs.
I'm talking about in the playoffs.
Right,
They're saying, should Philly be worried about this round 1 rematch? It depends on how you look at it. Of all the teams that are going to make the playoffs in the NFC, I think Washington is clearly the weakest. But I don't look at Washington the way I look at some of the potential 7 seeds in the AFC, like Miami or Indy, where it's like even Denver. Oh, you're just drawing dead in round 1 against Buffalo. You know what I mean? Like, I think when you have a quarterback playing at the level he is, with the offense capable of putting up those types of points, even when they have 5 turnovers, even when they're against an excellent defense, that's not your ideal round 1 playoff matchup. So I would like Philly in that spot substantially. But, yeah, you would be a little worried about that because right now that would be the playoff matchup, these 2 teams.
I tend to agree. I would pick Philly, but Jaden is playing so well, and he's been so poised. Like, it doesn't look like the playoff moment would be too big for him. And obviously, as Jalen was hurt, well, the defense was healthy, and he still put up 36 points. That's more than any team has put up against them. Tampa was the only team that beat them, like in week 3, I think, was the only other team to score 30 or more against them. So that is a problem. Look, I'm not worried about Philly. I think this was a loss that was they were due for a loss. You're going to lose some of these games, especially in the division. And I also think, Coach, as far as their offense, like you saw Washington shut down Saquon in the last 3 quarters. He had 109 of his 150 yards in the first quarter. But with Jalen out, and no matter what you think of Jalen's passing, it's way better than Kenny Pickett's.
Of course.
And Pickett obviously isn't the run threat that Jalen is. So they knew it's all Saquon for the most part. So that's why they were able to hone in and shut him down.
But you still got to give him a lot of credit. I thought that maybe Philly pulled back a little bit in terms of the number of carries they gave Saquon. But he got 16 carries in the second half, and he averaged 1.7 yards per attempt. And for them to be able to do that, to hold Saquon to 1.7 yards per attempt on 16 carries, whether Jalen's there or not, is really impressive.
Coach, I know you always like to shout out defensive coordinators and defensive coordinator assistants.
And offensive line coaches.
You got.
Okay, guys. We've already been through this. When you have a backup quarterback and a quarterback that the defense only needs to really respect so much, you're gonna be able to get after the running back. That much has consistently been true in the NFL for years and years and years and years, okay? So let's understand what the story is here. Your offense is going to completely change, especially because of how Kellen Moore wants to run that offense. It absolutely starts with Jalen Hurts. Yes, it's a run-first team and a run-first identity, but it still starts and is able to be executed in the way that it is because of Jalen Hurts. So when you remove Jalen Hurts from the equation, things are going to not look good. That is just, it's the most obvious thing ever. Not to mention also the defense was banged up. There were players that were in and out of the lineup. Like literally during the broadcast, they said, wow, Philly's players are dropping like flies. Okay, so no, this defense was not 100% there. They weren't. Either because they were getting injured or because they were too busy getting thrown out of the game, which is indefensible. Not to mention the Eagles weren't able to sustain drives like they normally could and keep the ball out of Jaden Daniels' hands. So that also matters. If you see here, the Eagles were 3 for 16 on third down. 3 for 16. They could not sustain drives. And normally, which is, like 19%, 18.5% or whatever. Normally, they're 42.79%. You think that matters? It most certainly does. So, it's just going to be a problem. It's going to have this trickle-down effect tremendously. Should Philly worry about this round 1 rematch? The reality is this was a bizarre game for both teams. If you're the Philadelphia Eagles, 1, you're not going to think that Jalen Hurts is going to be injured. But 2, you also can't bank on the Commanders turning the ball over 5 times. So, because that's a lot of turnovers. That's 2 interceptions and 3 fumbles, I think it was. You're not going to bank on that. So this game was honestly bizarre for both teams. Because honestly, if you're the Commanders, you're like, well, we don't care whether Jalen Hurts was playing or not. If we just didn't turn the ball over, we just didn't have those fumbles, we were charging, rolling, ready to win this game. Straight up. So I don't even know in this game. It's like I don't even know if you're the coaching staff, what you even do with it, in terms of how you let it educate you, in terms of how you want to attack a game plan going into the playoffs round 1 wild card round. I'm not so sure what it does, because do the Commanders, are they going to change things offensively? Because they're just kind of like, hey, what we did was working great. Again, just don't fumble the ball and we're good to go. And the Eagles, they're like, hey, when Jalen Hurts was playing, our run game was huge. My God, let's go. And not to mention, they played us defensively completely different when Jalen Hurts was playing versus when Kenny Pickett was playing. Like I talked about in my previous video, Dan Quinn completely changed up the defensive approach. So, in a way, they're going to know this is what they're going to want to do, but we only got to see it for, 11 plays or so. So we did not really get an actual fair representation of what this game would look like. And if you want to keep going further back, then we could even say that first round, that first game, that people want to say that Jaden Daniels was banged up and not fully healthy as well. So I don't know. I think at the end of the day, in this type of situation, when you're talking about teams maybe the Kansas City Chiefs and the Ravens, or the Ravens versus the Bills and things of that nature, I think that those teams and those quarterbacks are so great and so high level that it really does come down to some of these other little things, where it really is again, do the Kansas City Chiefs return a punt for 40 yards? Does Lamar Jackson throw the ball to Bateman, and does he catch it, or does he catch it, fumble it, and then kind of catch it but fall out of bounds, and now it's an incomplete? It's the margins are just so teeny tiny. Does Lamar rip off a 45-yard run for a touchdown, or does he scramble around, has the 45 yards, but instead he throws it down the field and it just goes off the fingertips? It's just some of these weird, such unpredictable things. But when you get to a team like this, where you should legitimately be demonstratively better, again, you're either better or you're not. You either step up and play and beat that team, or you don't. And I think with someone as great as Jaden Daniels, who I think he is shaping up to be a legitimate great quarterback, it is unpredictable, because you don't know what that quarterback will be able to do. Can he put that team on his back? Now, he shouldn't have the roster to be able to do that again, no matter how great he is, to do that against a team that should be as complete and as stacked and as high level and as well coached as the Philadelphia Eagles. If you put Patrick Mahomes on the New York Giants, they are not magically going to win the Super Bowl this year. Or Mahomes, or Lamar, or Allen. Pick your favorite quarterback. Whatever quarterback you want to pick, whoever you think is the greatest quarterback in the history of the universe, put him on the New York Giants. They're not magically winning. Now, obviously, the Commanders aren't as bad as the Giants, and it's not like Jaden Daniels has just been carrying that team up to the level that he is. But he's a huge, huge, huge reason why. As you should have been able to see against this, this game on Sunday. The reality is you probably saw one of his best games. You probably saw his best punch. So the question is if that's his best punch, do the Eagles have enough to contain it? And if they were still able to put up 33 points with a backup quarterback, and although what was the score? 21-7 before Jalen went down? I forget exactly. And again, one of those touchdowns is a little tough because Saquon obviously just ripped off a massive run and scored a touchdown, right? Like that was, but again, as exciting and dynamic and as great as those things are, those things can be a little fluky too at times, right? I mean, that's why we don't really see that regular. That's why it is so unique and exciting when it happens. You just like you can't rely on a team to get 5 turnovers. And I know Saquon Barkley has done it a handful of times. I'm pretty sure a couple times, literally against the Commanders, or the Rams. I forget at this point. It's still not something that you're just like, all right, we just need Saquon to rip off a 65-yard touchdown run, and we're good, baby. Like that can't be the game plan, right? So. I really think because of how how the regular season games unfolded for these teams, it's pretty unpredictable, but the Eagles have proven to be the significantly better team. And so if Philly's worried about this matchup, then they should be worried about their chances just to get to the Super Bowl, let alone win the Super Bowl. I get what Nick is saying that sometimes, these round 1 matchups, you're set up to like win a lot more easier. Like if you were playing the Dolphins or like the Steelers of last year with Mason Rudolph and whatnot. Like I get that, truly. But I think either way, my logic is you're either the better team or you're not. And the margin of error, the margin of victory shouldn't be this narrow in the round 1 of the playoffs, unless you really are right. That margin of that margin of victory, margin of error is that narrow, I believe, if the Eagles are playing the Lions, the Eagles and the Packers and the Lions, the Vikings and the Packers. Like I said, then it's kind of like, yeah, man, what's gonna happen? Like it's going to come down to all those little things that no one ever thinks about. We have seen that year after year after year after year. The Eagles were on the other side of it against the Kansas City Chiefs when I forget what was it, MVS I forget who now, who had the big punt return, in the final 5 minutes or how much time was left to, for the Chiefs. Like that was huge. And I just talked about it in a previous video, the muff punt against the 49ers in the Super Bowl, and Greenlaw going down, and the random fumble from Christian McCaffrey. There's just all these bizarre things. The bizarre fumble on Jalen Hurts. Just all unpredictable things. But when you're talking about a team that's supposed to be as great as the Eagles, playing a team that's definitely up and coming and definitely not scrubs, you should be able to endure that. Which I think the Eagles kind of proved when they had a backup quarterback and they still almost won against a quarterback who they're saying should be getting potential MVP votes. So, we will find out soon enough. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Philadelphia Eagles? Do you think they should be worried about this round 1 rematch? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.